It's the last week of fantasy football for 2009, and this, the last video of the CBSSports.com Fantasy Football Series, brought to you by Norton, because every click matters. It's power projections for Week 17 for those of you who are still playing. Jason Horowitz, glad to be with you, and glad to have Jamey Eisenberg filling in for Dave Richard here the last week. Jamey, let's start this off by wishing you a Happy New Year, buddy.
Happy New Year to you, too, and I'll see you on Sunday for Fantasy Football Today,
where we'll be doing a lot more projections, including which teams are going to be playing their guys. Jamey, project how many teams are sitting this weekend.
Well, you got to obviously look at New England. They're expected to sit guys. We know Indianapolis is not going to play a full game. You have to figure that Green Bay, they probably can't really do anything in terms of their playoff outlook for this week. San Diego, I don't expect them to do very much either. Cincinnati, they don't really have a lot to play for unless New England loses. Then maybe Cincinnati goes. And Arizona's the tricky one, because if, in fact, Minnesota somehow loses to the Giants, then Arizona still has what to play for, even with Dallas and Philadelphia playing at the same time.
Well, let me ask you about that Dallas-Philadelphia game, Jamey, because when we did fantasy football today, I projected that back in the day before that first game, I projected that Miles Austin would have fewer than 10 fantasy points. One catch, 49 yards, and a touchdown, so he had 10 fantasy points. Desean Jackson was also shut down in that game. Do you project good games for those two?
Well, you have to sort of look at them and expect them to do well. You know, Desean Jackson's playing at such a high level at this point. We know that Dallas is going to try and take him away, but every team's tried to take him away, and I think that Donovan McNabb will play a little bit better. You know, the key for him in that game, the first matchup, was the pressure that Dallas was able to get on him. The Eagles' offensive line's a little bit healthier, even though they're missing their center this week. And DeMarcus Ware, I know he's been playing through this neck injury, but he is not at the same level that he was prior to that injury, and their pass rush is obviously predicated on what he's able to do. So I think you'll see with Brian Westbrook, another weapon in the mix, McNabb will play well, Desean Jackson will play well. And on the other side of the ball, Tony Romo's playing at such a high level right now, you have to trust Miles Austin if you're setting your lineup. And as you mentioned, you know, all these teams resting guys, you're not going to sit Miles Austin with all of these other guys not playing. You're not going to sit Desean Jackson or the quarterback. So
absolutely. And that gets into the fact that which guys you do project to have big games when you're looking for fill-ins. If you're, when you're playing Week 17 of fantasy football, you have to find guys off the waiver wire. So let me, you mentioned the Green Bay Packers sitting guys. Is Brandon Jackson someone that's projected to have huge numbers this weekend? Yeah,
Brandon Jackson, somebody you can look at. Although I do think that he'll split some carries with Amon Green, who's still, for whatever reason, still a factor for the Packers. We like Mike Tolbert a lot because we saw him get double-digit carries last week against the Titans, and I think that'll happen again this week. I think Donald Brown is somebody, if he's available, you can pick him up and use him because he'll get quite a few carries along with Mike Hart, who's definitely available. Wide receivers, Devin Aromashodu, pick him up now, even if it was a regular week. You know, you saw what he was able to do last week. Great matchup this week against the Lions. As you know, the Lions can't stop anybody in pass defense. There are some guys that could help you. You know, quarterbacks is a little tricky because you'd have to trust a Chad Henne or the guy that I know you're in love with, Josh Freeman. But both those guys have good matchups this week. But, you know, for the most part, it's really looking at some of these backup running back options. The Mike Tolberts, the Brandon Jacksons, the Donald Browns, you know, these guys could be very viable options for you this week.
And then we'll talk come Sunday about which guys will be projected in terms of high picks next year, and if any of these guys that are starting to have big games of late, like a Devin Aromashodu, will be anything of value come 2010. All right, Jamey, here's the other one. Project history. Does Chris Johnson get it?
You know, I think he will, and this is interesting. I'm glad you brought this up. You're looking at Vince Young and Kenny Britt and Nate Washington and maybe even Justin Gage as good fantasy options this week because of the matchup against Seattle. I sort of disagree with that a little bit because of Chris Johnson. I think they're going to give Chris Johnson maybe 40 carries to try and make sure he can break this record. He needs 234 yards. It's a tall task to ask, but we know Seattle's really much packed it in with their effort the last couple of weeks. Now it's their last game in front of their home crowd, so they'll probably give a little bit more effort, but the Titans are going to give Chris Johnson every opportunity to break this record. To say he's going to get it, I don't know if I'd put money on that, but I think when you're talking about the opportunity is there, sure. It would take a career game for him, but you know, it's hard to go against him with the way that he's played in the matchup that he's facing. So look for him to get, you know, in upwards of 30 to 35 carries, if not 40, as the Titans with nothing to play for. This is their lone goal for this last week of the season.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one as well. Also, okay, real quickly, Jamey, not fantasy, but just for fun, project the Super Bowl. Who's in it? Who wins it?
You know, I think right now you got to go with the Chargers and the Eagles just based on the way that they're playing. I'm going to go with the Eagles. I think this is Donovan McNabb's year. Andy Reid is, you know, well deserving of everything that he's gone through, and I would take the Eagles to beat be in Miami and holding the trophy.
All right, I'm going to take the Colts and the Eagles. That's what I'm going to take for the Super Bowl, and I'm going to take the Eagles to hold the trophy as well. Jamey, thank you very much, sir, for filling in. See you Sunday on Fantasy Football Today.
You got it, buddy. Happy New Year to you and everybody there.
Same to you. All right, folks, for more, be sure to stay with CBSSports.com. Again, this will wrap up the CBSSports.com Fantasy Football Series for 2009, brought to you by Norton, because every click matters. But stay with the website throughout 2010, which is, oh, by the way, tomorrow, throughout 2010 to see what you should be looking for to the drafts come August and September of 2010. For Jamey Eisenberg, I'm Jason Horowitz. Happy New Year, and take care, folks.